All right, we are live. Thanks for tuning into the Sheet Metal Shaping podcast, where we discuss the pursuit of sheet metal shaping education through traditional coach building techniques. My guest today on the show, master of metal himself, Mr. Dave Remian of Remianz Metal Shaping. What's up, man?
Hey, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm very
Thanks
excited.
for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. A fellow Canadian. I like that.
Yeah.
I always love to point out when we have Canadians on the show, because we get people from all over, right? Europe, Australia, and I'm Canadian, so I like to shed some light on that too.
There you go.
Tell the folks a little bit about yourself and Remianz Metal Shaping.
There could be a lot.
Oh man, where do we start?
Where do we start here? Yeah. I guess I got into it through my dad. My dad was into cars and painting cars and all that stuff. Back in the 70s, late 70s, I worked at a place called Precision Sports Cars. And we used to rebuild the Austin Healys from ground up. And it was a great place to work because all the templates of everything was hanging on the wall, and, you would take a panel off and use that template and remake the panel or whatever, right? And that's where I met my mentor. And my mentor's name was Bryn Nichols. And I worked on and off with him, I guess, for 25 years.
Wow.
And learned a few things along the way.
Yeah, I guess, eh?
Right. But great guy. He's passed on now, but was a great guy to work with for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then from there?
From there, I guess he even worked when I opened up my own shop. He worked with me at my shop as well. And we did some great cars there. And we won some Concours d'Elegance shows and, that kind of thing. So
that's really the who's who, right?
Yeah.
Those type of shows, whether it's Florida, Pebble Beach, whatever. I mean, they're just the best of the best.
Yep. I think I got, I was very, very fortunate to have met him, and it was good. I think I got 10 Concours d'Elegance winners.
Really?
On my belt.
10,
something like that.
Holy smokes, Dave.
Yep.
What were those cars? Can you name them all?
I can name a few for sure. I was working for a company. I was the Guild, and we did a Type 59, 1932 Type 59 Bugatti. Mm-hmm. And that won in Meadowbrook. And it also got a Craftsman of the Year award. And that was a fun car. It was almost 3 years of my life building that car.
Oh my gosh.
On and off. But it was a heck of a car. 1911 Locomobile. And that was a scratch built car pretty much.
What's a Locomobile? I've never heard of this.
Yeah, it's a 3-door coach car, I guess. Cool. Brass era stuff, right?
Yep.
Big, very big car. It was a 1908 Daimler and 1909 Stutz Bearcat. 1909 Interstate. And that actually, that car we did at another place I was working at, or running, I guess at the time, was called Longfields. Mm-hmm. And that car actually ran in the first race at the Indianapolis 500 in 1909.
Oh my gosh.
And so we redid the car, and it ran the 100th race in 2009. It did the first couple of laps.
Wow.
So that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Wow. What an honor, eh? For you to be part of all of these big things.
Yep.
Wow. What's you mentioned your mentor. What's the importance of a mentor to you? Obviously, you didn't just dream this stuff up. Somebody helped you along the way. when you first got started, what was the importance of that?
What was the importance of that? I think that, he basically took me under his wing, and showed me everything, he knew, and I would pick and choose the things that I liked from him. And, if I didn't like how he did it, I would, change it to my own way, I guess, or whatever. Right. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, like when you first get started, sometimes you don't even know what you don't even know. And to have a mentor, I would assume in your circumstance would have been a key factor to your success.
Right. And like I said, I was very fortunate to have met him for sure.
Mm-hmm. If you could describe the way that this mentor would coach and teach you, how could you put that into words?
He was a pretty good teacher. Little rough around the edges, if I didn't do it right the first time, or something, you get a whack in the back of the head or something.
Yeah.
What are you doing? But he was rough around the edges. He would, you'd watch him do it, and he'd show you, and then you'd get her done.
Yeah, that's right. And was he an Englishwheel guy as well, or was he a more powerhammer?
He was Englishwheel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And was he Canadian or American?
He was actually Scottish.
Oh, no way.
He worked at Rolls Royce. He was brought up through the English wheel system, or the English panel beating system, right? Worked on building buses. He worked at Rolls Royce, and so it was pretty neat.
Is there a lot of coach building in buses? Who'd have thought?
Yeah, well, I guess the old stuff, eh? The older stuff with all the big compound curves in them, and
Yeah, a little different than a slab-sided dump truck today. You know what I mean? Like just no character. Just got to get from A to B, get to school. That's it.
Exactly.
In terms of some differences between the European type of stuff and maybe some of the American things, the way the Italians were doing it, how many different types of shaping systems are out there? You mentioned he was Scottish.
He was a panel beater, so he would hammer out. If you had a big compound curve, he would hammer into a bag or a piece of wood, and then start shaping it on the wheel.
And anything further, like that was his only gig? That was the only way he would do it, or like it works my way and this is the way, that's it?
He always used to say, I never wrote the book on doing this, right?
Where would he have learned from? Like if you trace this lineage back, he taught you, you teach others. Where would he have acquired the information to get him going?
Well, he, I know he went through a school system in England, for coach building or panel beating, right? So, I don't know. I'm not, that's all I know.
Yeah, I guess there would have been a real evolution from horse and buggy days up to to modern times. You see these cars ripping around, beautiful, controlled by computers and all the stuff. But when you take it all the way back, where has the industry evolved from when we go from horse and buggy to now?
Geez. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay. Why don't we talk tools? So in terms of what you were learning from him, he was an Englishwheel guy. How did he drip on you for the Englishwheel and the way that he was making panels such that you evolved this into your business today?
So through Bryn, he basically taught me, it's just a stretching machine that, makes the panels, right? And using lots of templates and what you're trying to accomplish, and cut it out and start shaping, So
the way that the wheel actually functions, for the folks who don't know how an Englishwheel actually works, can you describe it?
So going back and forth through the machine, it actually stretches the metal. Depending on what anvil you're using or how much pressure you're using, or for me, I have to actually see the piece that I'm making in my mind before I can make it. And I know it's hard to visualize, but you have to be able to, for me.
Right.
I mean, some people might be different, but and templates, using lots of templates to make the piece. I've actually used the wheel as for making louvers, making a louver die and setting it in the wheel and punching louvers with it.
What does that look like? I've never seen a louver die in an English wheel. I've heard about it, but I've never seen it in person.
It just sits in the saddle, right?
Yeah.
And you have your top piece hooked up to where your wheel would be, and then you would wind it up, and it would punch the louver, right?
Really? Do you roll it back and forth, or is it like a one roll type of operation?
For doing a louver?
Yeah, for the louver.
So you would have to make it so that the back spacing is correct. So when you move it through,
yeah,
you do your first louver, and then you would move it through, and it would pick up your next louver, for your spacing, right? So
interesting. And it would have a sharp edge on it, right, to pierce?
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. And what about for the lower wheel? What is the lower wheel?
So the lower wheel would be like the female part of the die, right?
Oh, I
the
see.
louver die, right?
I see. Wow. Interesting.
Yep.
I've never seen one of those in person. It's always been like a pullmax, or
it was
some people
totally,
do it on a roller.
Yeah, it was a total custom made piece for sure.
Did you learn that from your mentor?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you? Right?
Exactly.
Okay. Moving forward on the English wheel. So you got an upper and lower die. You're putting material through it. Let's talk about the pressure settings. How does the pressure affect what you're trying to do to the metal?
Depending on what you want to do with the metal. I mean, for getting a lot of height, in a panel, you'd want to give it a little more pressure, and it's not too much pressure, because I always bring it up gradually. I mean, there's some guys that get in there and start winding it up, and then you end up in a big mess, and you start getting all these big ribs in a panel. And but I always like to bring it up nice and slow, and if I need a little more pressure, I'll give it a little more, and then start blending, right?
And are you primarily a stretching type of system, or do you get involved with shrinking as well?
I think I'm more stretching.
Yeah.
If stretch something too far, if you're beating it into a bag or something, and you overstretch it, and you can actually shrink it back a bit, putting it through the wheel. I mean, it's difficult to learn that, but you actually can. So
can you put that into words? That sounds pretty interesting. Shrinking on a stretching machine sounds very intriguing, Dave.
Yeah, it's so if you're hammering if you're doing a wheel well on like a 30s or a 40s car, and you're beating it into a bag, and you've overstretched it, you can actually run it through the wheel on a light wheel and shrink it back.
Do you have to create a tuck and then you crush a tuck, or like what is the technique once you're rolling it through? Because I mean, like normally if you're putting a panel through a wheel, it's stretching or it's planishing and that's it, right? But if you're saying shrinking,
if you have a light wheel, that's not really, it's a finishing wheel, like it with not a lot of pressure on it, and you're running it through the machine, and you're taking out, all the hammer puckers and all that. It will actually shrink it back a bit.
And what crown are we talking here?
Well, I mean, if you're making a wheel well, right? Like a big, deep wheel well.
Yeah, high crown. Okay.
High crown.
Very interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
And just your standard steel anvils, no rubber, no anything like this.
No rubber.
No.
No rubber.
Okay. So we talked pressure. Let's talk anvils themselves. So when you are wheeling, do you
Yep.
ever make your own anvils? Do you ever make your own tooling? How does this look?
I have made my own wheels, and I guess I got about 4 or 5 different heights on wheels that I use. I just found, you see all these English wheels with all these different anvils and all that. And I mean, I only really use 3 or 4.
Right.
And that's about it,
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because there's a lot of companies out there that sell various tools, all kinds of unusual crowns, different types of applications and different types of products per
Right.
se. Why might that be, in your opinion, if you built 10 concourse cars and you only use 3 or 4?
They're just trying to upsell, I guess, in my opinion.
Right.
Right. But I'm used to that 3 or 4. I've always just been using the 3 or 4. So, maybe other wheels would make things easier, but not how I do things,
Gotcha. I guess what's familiar too, right? It's like, this is what you've been brought to know and you make that work. You work with what you got.
Exactly. And when I had the pullmax, it was a big wide open pullmax. I can't remember if it was a P2 or a P3. It basically looked like a big English wheel. And I would actually rough things out first on the hammer and then put it through the wheel.
Oh, wow.
And
Like a doming die or something.
To quicken things up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Would that be when you're doing that, because of pullmax, like they can't hit, it can only really push, right? Would that be something like a rubber die on the inside and it would just stretch for them?
Or a doming die, if you were doing high crowns and stuff, I used to do a lot of 40 Willys rear fenders on it.
Nice.
And they were all nice big radius fenders, and you could almost do a fender, rough it out, in about 2-3 hours, and then start wheeling, right? So
what about frame stiffness? Let's talk frame stiffness. So I know you have a beautiful Brown Boggs, like a monster English wheel.
Yep.
That's a cast piece. Right?
It is.
Versus something of today where maybe it's a tube structure, maybe it's something different. Let's talk about the stiffness of the frame. How does your cast iron wheel compare to something of a modern era?
So I find that the new stuff, if you tighten up too much, it'll actually start to move the top wheel. And you're losing a bit there, but compared to my big cast wheel, there's not really too much out there I would really use.
When did you acquire that wheel?
Oh, late 80s, I think.
Really? So you've had this thing like 30, 40 years.
Yep.
Holy. Wow. And where did it come from? There's always a story with these antique machines.
So I'm trying to remember where I was working. It could have been at Kendrick Coachworks. This fellow was in there. He came from Newfoundland, and I bought it off of him, and he was telling me that he found it in some boatyard, and he brought it back to his place and restored it all. And when he was working at Kendrick's, he brought it with him, and I think he ended up leaving and he knew I really liked it, asked me if I wanted to buy it, and I said, sure, I'll buy it, and that's how I ended up with it.
Did you ship it home or?
Yeah, well, actually, we had a big car trailer deliver it to the house here, so
that's funny.
Wasn't too bad.
It's funny. You got to be prepared on both ends when you're getting a shipment of that weight.
Oh my God, this thing weighs like 2,500 pounds.
Yeah,
it's huge.
That's so funny. So when you're looking at antique equipment like this, can you really go wrong? Like if somebody found a cast wheel, can you go wrong after they're refurbished, or are some better than others?
There's a lot of good cast wheels out there, like the Ranelagh is a really nice cast wheel. Um, I think Edwards. I think Edwards makes a wheel. You know, I think cast is the best personally.
Yeah. Well, when I built the one behind my left shoulder here, I modeled it after an Edwards because I like that shape.
I mean, you can cut out 1/4-inch plate, you know, in the shape of a C and weld it all together, and you know, and I'm sure that would work. You know.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. Do you have a favorite type of panel that you prefer? Do you prefer high crown, low crown, or you just go where the job needs?
Whatever it needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any favorite panels over the years?
I think the Locomobile. So it's got big high crown corners where the seats are, and then nice contoured body, aluminum bodied panels throughout the rest of the car. Yeah.
How many hours would you have spent on that thing? This Locomobile seems to stand out.
Yeah, it was quite the car. It was a lot of work.
I'm gonna Google this after we get off the show. I want to see what a Locomobile looks like.
Yeah, it took me 18 months, and that was included with the inner wood structure. Was all made out of ash, and then we covered it in aluminum.
Wow,
had to make all the aluminum moldings, everything, all the fenders, hood. It was a heck of a job.
Yeah, no doubt. And what year would this have been?
1911.
Oh, no, that
I did it. I think it was 2004, 5, something like that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What is it about these old cars? Like they just have so much character and so much soul. Agree?
I agree.
Yeah.
My favorite stuff is all the, you know, the brass era stuff.
Yep.
You know, 20s and 30s, some 40s stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
in terms of time spent, let's talk about the time component. This is not a get it done tomorrow Amazon Prime type of business hobby, however people look at it. What do you think is missing in the industry right now with respect to time and the way that people see the craft?
The way I was used to doing a Concourse car, when it came in, everything would have to be stripped off of it. Everything stripped out of it, engine, tranny, rear end, everything. Everything was cleaned, repainted, redone. Any woodwork that was in the car would have to be redone. Just, you know, if it wasn't up to snuff. Usually, you know, if it had glass would have to be replaced. Everything was re-chromed, reupholstered, painted top notch, sanded, polished, done to the nines. Nothing missed. And when I, you know, put these cars together, even the screws, the flathead screws were all the same way. You know, one wouldn't be twisted this way and the other one wouldn't be twisted this way. You know, everything was straight up and down. And it's worked for me, you know, for building these Concours winners, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of a budget would go into a Concours winner?
Oof.
These are $1 million cars plus sometimes, right?
Exactly. I'm the Locomobile. I trying to remember what kind of dollars went into this thing. You know, I would say maybe 400,000 on something like that. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, whatever the customer wants, basically, is what you're doing. I mean, you know, I think the Bugatti. I think I heard 700,000 or something like that.
Wow.
And that was pretty much scratch built. I think there was like 30% of original parts, and everything else had to be made. So,
what's your personal opinion on that? So if you remake the whole car and you still have the original title, or you keep the firewall, or you know you keep some small part of it, would you consider, in your opinion, would you consider that a new car, or would you consider that a restoration?
I got to say, if there's only 30%, I would think that would be, a new car.
Yeah. What gets you motivated? Like, what gets you motivated these days to actually get out of bed in the morning, go build stuff? Like, you've seen so much over your career, and your career has been vast and lengthy. What gets you motivated now, seeing what you've seen?
So I really like designing stuff. So I'm building a bike right now, an aluminum bodied bagger, twin turbo, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I only work on it through the winters, and
Yeah.
hopefully have it done for this spring coming up. So
Why bikes instead of cars?
Cars are getting too big. So I think the days of laying on the floor and working on the floor and are kind of done.
Yeah.
Bikes are a little smaller, and they're pretty tough to work on. Actually, some bikes, depending on the detail and stuff that you're doing, right?
And you're saying aluminum body. This must have more than just a gas tank sitting on the frame. Like, there must be some character here. Can you describe that?
So it's my favorite car builder back when was Fagoni Falaschi. All the nice swoops and curves and
Talbot logos and so on.
Yeah. And Art Deco stuff as well, right? So that I've based this bike kind of on that.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
In terms of fender profile and things like this, how do you get a bike to look Art Deco versus, like, a Harley? What's the difference?
You have to sort of look at what Art Deco did back then, and then kind of base your thoughts on that and build it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I really liked how he did stuff back then. So
Sure. Was there any one design that he did that really stood out for you, and you said, "Oh, that's the one for me"?
Nah, not really any one thing. I just, I really liked all his, the swoopy fenders and the big radius fenders and, that kind of thing. So,
man, this has been amazing. As we wind the show down, one of the biggest things that I'm going to take from this episode for sure is the fact that I didn't even know you had 10 Concours d'Elegance cars under your belt.
Yep.
That's so impressive. Just the fact that we can sit down here for half an hour, have a chit chat about all of these things that you've done is truly spectacular. I mean, you should be so proud of what you've done, and the fact that you can say, yeah, I was part of this. And you look back at these cars and there they are on the road, or there they are at a museum, or there they are at a show. And, like, you can say that you rolled the fenders, you did the hoods, you did all of this work to make it just so. So for me to you, thank you so much for being on the show. If people want to reach out to you, how can they do so?
They can reach me at info@remianz.com.
Can you spell that?
REMIANZ.com.
There you have it. Dave Remian, thanks for listening to the Sheet Metal Shaping Podcast. Don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.